Hello everyone, welcome to DevWave Diaries. If you're passionate about tech and eager to learn, you've come to the right place. In today's video, I'll be completing second part of the credit card website video. Let's dive in. First, let's begin by creating a new section for our website. We'll add a div with the class name page3. Inside this div, create an h1 tag and write any heading of your choice, or feel free to use the one I'm adding here. Next, add 3 p tags to include some descriptive text. You can either write the content manually or simply use lorem ipsum to generate placeholder text. Next, create a button element and give it the class name whitebtn. Inside this button, write the text "See All." This button will be used for further interaction on our page and will help guide users to explore more content. After that, create a div with the class name box. Inside this box div, add 3 more divs, one with the class name left, another with the class name mid, and the last one with the class name right. Next, inside the left div, create another div with the class name top. Below this top div, add a p tag and write any text you prefer. It could be descriptive content, an intro, or even placeholder text like lorem ipsum. This structure helps segment the content clearly within the left section. After that, let's move on to the mid div and start adding some content to it. First, create a div with the class name top. Inside this top div, add an image tag, and in its src attribute, include a family image. Don't worry about the exact image right now. I'll provide all the image assets through a GitHub link that will be shared in the description. Next, right below the image, add an h3 tag and write "Friends and Family" as the heading. Finally, include a p tag beneath that and write a short description or any text you prefer. This structure will help visually separate and present your content in a clean and engaging layout. Now inside the right div, we will add same structured elements, as we did inside the mid div. Now that we've successfully added all the elements required for the third page of our website, it's time to switch over to the CSS section and begin styling this part of the layout. First, let's add the .page3 class selector alongside the existing page styles. This way, the third page will inherit the same basic styling as page 1 and page 2, keeping our design consistent. At the top of the CSS code, we already defined some basic styles for the page 2 div. Now, we'll add .page3 there as well, so that page 3 shares the same styles as page 2. Now, open the website in your browser. You'll see that page 3 has inherited some of the same styles as page 2, giving it a consistent look and feel. Next, scroll up a bit in the CSS file and locate the selector for .page2h1. Right next to it, add .page3h1. This way, the h1 tags inside the page 3 div will get the same styling as page 2, so we don't have to repeat the code multiple times. Next, let's style the button with the class name whitebtn. We will add padding of 0.75 rem vertically and 1 rem horizontally. Set the font size to 1.1 rem. Add a border radius of 5 pixels for rounded corners, and give it a margin top of 1 rem for spacing. Now, open the browser and you'll see that the button looks perfect with the applied styles. Now let's move on to styling the box div. We'll begin by setting its width to 80% so it doesn't stretch across the entire screen and maintains a clean layout. Then, we'll apply display, flex to arrange its child elements in a row. Then, we'll add a gap of 2 rem. We'll also add a margin top of 2 rem to give it some breathing room from the elements above. Finally, we'll align the text to the center to maintain a neat and balanced visual appearance across the section. Next, we'll add styling to the top section inside the left container. To do this, we'll use the .left.top selector. Inside this style rule, we'll set the height to 80%. After that, we'll target the top elements inside both the mid and right divs. To do this, we'll use the selectors .mid.top and .right.top. Inside the style rule, set the position to relative and the height to 70%. This gives us more control over the positioning of child elements and ensures that these top sections take up the majority of space within their respective containers. Now, let's style the image inside the top div. And set its width to 100%. This ensures that the image scales perfectly to fit the full width of its container, making it responsive and maintaining the layout's alignment across different screen sizes. Next, let's style the left div inside the box div. Set its position to relative so that absolutely positioned child elements can be placed accurately inside it. Assign width 50% to let it take up half the container, and height 20 rem. To define its height, use a background color of #54535C for a sleek, dark look. Then, apply border radius 20 pixel to round the corners and padding 2 rem for inner spacing. Finally, set font size 0.9 rem to maintain a compact, clean text layout. Now, open the browser, and you'll notice that the left div is styled perfectly. It has a clean, modern layout. Next, let's focus on styling the middle and right sections of our layout. We'll set both of these divs to have a relative position, which helps in positioning any child elements inside them later if needed. Each will take up 25% of the container's width, making them smaller. Their height will be fixed at 20 rem to ensure all three sections have equal vertical space. For the background, we choose a dark shade, #54535C. To soften the edges, we apply a border radius of 20 pixels. Then add padding of 2 rem. Finally, the font size inside these sections is set to 0.9 rem, providing clear and readable text without overpowering the design. All these styles together make the middle and right divs look consistent with the left div and contribute to a clean, organized third-page layout. Next, let's style the headings inside the middle and right sections. Set the font size to 1.4 rem for good readability, a font weight of 500 to make the text stand out, and a margin bottom of 1 rem to create space below the headings. This styling ensures the headings look clear and balanced within their sections. Now we have fully styled the third page. So far, we have completed designing and styling all 3 pages of our website. Now let's start building the 4th page of our website. First, create a div with the class name page4. Inside this, add another div with the class name background, which will be used later to give a unique visual feel to the section. Then, create a div with the class name content. Inside this content div, add an h1 tag and write "Connect your apps" as the heading. Below that, add 2 p tags and write any descriptive text you like. This could be custom written or generated using placeholder text like lorem ipsum. This sets up the structure of our 4th page, and we'll move on to styling it next. Next, create a button element with the class name whitebtn. Then, inside the button, write the text "Explore Apps." That wraps up the HTML structure for our 4th page. Now it's time to move on to the CSS styling part. First, let's ensure that the page 4 section has a consistent look and feel like the previous pages. To do that, scroll up to the part of the CSS where you've already applied shared styles to .page 2 and .page 3. Simply add .page 4 to that same selector list. This way, all the base styles, such as padding, display, and layout properties, will automatically apply to page 4 as well, keeping everything uniform across the site. Now scroll up just a bit more in your CSS file where you've added base layout styles for .page 2 and .page 3. Add .page 4 to that list as well. This ensures that page 4 inherits all the shared structural styles, like full viewport height, flex alignment, and width, so it blends seamlessly with the previous pages in design and responsiveness. Next, let's enhance the page 4 section by adding one more style. Set overflow, hidden to the page 4 div. Now let's style the div with the class name background. We'll set its position to absolute so it sits behind everything else, and place it at the top left corner using top 0 and left 0. After that, give it a full width and height to cover the entire section. For the background, we'll use an image. Just set the background image inside URL. Then, set background size to cover and background position to center to ensure it fills and aligns nicely. Add a slight zoom effect with transform, scale 1.4, for a more dynamic look. We'll also set overflow, hidden and z-index, 1 to keep it behind the main content and neatly contained within the section. Now, open the browser and you'll see that the background image has been successfully added to our fourth page. But the image did not shows up. I think I did something wrong. Looks like there was a small typo in the word background, which prevented the image from loading correctly. Let's fix that spelling mistake first. After correcting it, let's open the browser again. You will see the background image has been successfully added to our fourth page. But the background image is showing on top of all the text and buttons because its z-index is higher. Now let's fix this. Now let's style the content div so that it sits properly above the background. We'll set its position to absolute so it can freely float over the background layer. Then, we'll use display, flex with flex direction, column to stack the elements vertically. Setting align items, center ensures all items are centered horizontally. We'll also add a small gap of 0.5 rem between the elements for clean spacing. Lastly, we'll give it a z-index of 2 to make sure it stays above the background image. Open the browser, and you'll see that all the text and the button are now properly positioned on top of the background image. Everything looks clean and visually aligned, just the way we wanted. Next, let's style the heading inside the content div. We'll increase the font size to 3 rem to make it stand out, set the font weight to 500 for a balanced boldness, and add a bottom margin of 1 rem to give some spacing below the heading. This will make the heading visually appealing and neatly separated from the rest of the content. Open the browser, and you'll see the heading on the fourth page is now styled properly and clearly visible over the background. That completes the styling for our fourth page. Now let's move on and start creating the fifth page of our website. First, let's create the structure for our fifth page. We'll start by creating a div with the class name page5. Inside this div, add an image tag and give it an ID of machine. For the src attribute, set the image source to the machine image you'll be using. That's all the HTML structure we need for the fifth page. Now, let's move on to the CSS part. We'll begin by applying some basic styles to the page5 div, just like we did with the previous pages, so that it blends seamlessly into the overall design of the website. Now let's style the page5 div. We'll set a background image using background, URL, and inside the brackets, we'll add the background 2 image. Then we'll center the background using background position, center and make sure it covers the entire section with background size, cover. We'll also use display, flex and justify content, center to center the content horizontally, and finally set overflow, hidden to make sure nothing spills out visually. After that, let's style the image inside the page5 div. We'll set its position to absolute so it can be placed freely within the container. Then, set the bottom property to -30%, which will push the image slightly below the visible area, giving it a more dynamic and modern placement effect. And that's all the styling we needed for the final page of our website. With that, we've successfully created a total of 5 beautiful and visually appealing pages for our credit card website. Each section adds its own unique touch, and together they create a complete, modern, and engaging user experience. Now that all the styling is complete and we've already added the GSAP and ScrollTrigger CDNs to our HTML file, we're ready to move on to the fun part, adding animations. Let's start writing the landing page animation and the scroll-triggered animation effects to bring our website to life and make the user experience more dynamic and engaging. First, let's create a variable named TL. Set its value to GSAP. While typing, you might notice that VS Code changes this text. If it automatically changes the text or format, just press Ctrl+Z to undo the auto change. After that, make sure you've correctly written GSAP.timeline. This will initialize a new GSAP timeline. After that, write TL.from to define the first animation in your timeline. Inside the parentheses, select the nav element as the target. Then, pass an object as the second argument. In this object, set top to -20%, opacity to 0, and duration to 0.5. This will animate the navigation bar by fading it in and sliding it down from the top when the page loads. Now open the browser and refresh the page. You'll notice that the navigation bar smoothly slides in from the top while gradually becoming visible, thanks to the fade-out effect we just applied. Now we want to animate the entire left section using GSAP. Next, write .from, and inside the parentheses, pass in the selector string, .main.left h1, .main.left p, .imagebox, .btn button. This means we're targeting all these elements inside the left section. Then, create an object where you define the animation properties, set opacity to 0 so it starts invisible, bottom to -100 to make it rise up from below, duration to 0.75 seconds for a smooth effect, and add stagger, 0.1 to delay each element slightly for a cascading animation. Once you save and refresh the browser, you'll see all the elements animate into place one after another with a clean and dynamic feel. Next, write .from, again to create another animation step. Inside the parentheses, select the card by using #card. Then define an object with the animation properties. Set top to 110% so it starts from below the visible area, right to 0% to keep it aligned from the right side, and apply a rotate of 90 degrees to give it a flipping effect as it enters. Set duration to 0.75 seconds for a smooth transition. After saving and refreshing, you'll see the card slide up from the bottom with a stylish rotation, adding a nice visual impact to your landing page. After that, let's add scroll-based animations to our website using GSAP ScrollTrigger. Now let's move on to adding a scroll animation to our website. We'll start by creating a new GSAP timeline and store it in a variable called TL1. This timeline will be controlled using ScrollTrigger. Inside the timeline, we'll define an object where we specify a few things. First, we set the trigger to .page1, which means the animation will be activated when the first page scrolls into view. Then, we define the start point as 90% 90% and the end point as 180% 80%. Lastly, we enable markers to true so we can see the scroll positions visually in the browser while testing. Now open the browser, and you'll notice that the scroll markers are visible. The scroll start is set at 90% of the page height, and the scroll end is positioned at 80%. The animation begins when 90% of the .page1 section comes into view and ends at 180%, making the scroll range visually clear with the help of the markers. Next, inside the ScrollTrigger object, let's add scrub, true. This will sync the animation smoothly with the scroll position, allowing the animation to play forward and backward as you scroll up or down. After that, write TL1.to, and inside it, select the card image. Then, create an object and set top to 100%. Now, when you scroll the page, you'll see the card smoothly moves downward until it reaches 100% from the top. Now we just need to assign the card to its proper position that we want to set during the scroll animation. Later in this video, I'll show you how you can find the correct position for this card image. Next, change the card's top value to 140%. Then open the browser, and you'll notice that as we scroll, the card now moves downward until it reaches 140%. Now, we just need to move this card a little bit in the left direction. Next, add left, 35% after the top, 140% line. Now, when you scroll the page, the card not only moves downward but also shifts towards the center left area, giving it a smooth transition to its new position. After that, add scale, 0.9 to the same object. This will slightly reduce the size of the card image as it moves, giving it a subtle zoom-out effect during the scroll animation. It adds a nice depth to the motion and makes the transition look more natural and dynamic. Next, let's create another variable named TL2, and set its value to GSAP.timeline. Inside the parentheses, create an object and use the same scroll trigger properties we used earlier. In your new TL2 timeline, update the trigger property inside the scroll trigger object to target.page2, and set the start position to 80% 80%. This means the scroll animation will begin when 80% of page 2 reaches 80% of the viewport height. Also, comment out the markers, true line from the previous timeline to remove the previous visual scroll markers from the screen. As you can see, once the first scroll animation finishes, meaning the elements in page 1 have completed their transitions, we immediately begin the animation for page 2. This smooth transition between animations indicates that our start position for page 2 is set perfectly. The 80% 80% start point ensures that the scroll animation begins just as the user naturally scrolls into the second section. Now, let's update the scroll animation's endpoint. By setting the end value to 160% 60%, we're extending the scroll animation for page 2 a bit further. This means the animation will continue smoothly until the scroll reaches 60% of the height of the viewport and 160% of the scroll position. It gives us a bit more room to animate elements gradually, keeping the motion consistent and visually appealing as the user moves down the page. Next, we'll add a scroll animation using TL2.2 to animate the card. We'll target the card element and move it to a new position. Set the top value to 235% to push it further down, adjust the left to 15% to shift it slightly to the left, and scale it down to 0.8 to make it a bit smaller. This creates a smooth continuation of the scroll animation, making the card appear to travel across the screen while shrinking in size, enhancing the interactive feel of the page. Now you might be wondering, how do we figure out the correct position values for our scroll animation? Here's how. First, let's temporarily comment out the TL2 animation so it doesn't interfere. Then open your website in the browser and bring up the Inspect window. Select the card element from the Elements tab. As you scroll the page, you'll notice the card's top and left values changing in real time. To find the perfect final position for the card after the animation, separate the Inspect window for better visibility. With the card selected, manually adjust the top and left values using your keyboard's up and down arrow keys. Once you're happy with where the card sits on the screen, simply copy those values and use them in your GSAP animation. This hands-on method ensures the card ends up exactly where you want during the scroll. These are the position values we just determined for the TL2 animation. You'll need to follow the same method for every page where you want the card image to move and settle. Manually adjusting the top, left, and even scale properties using the browser's Inspect tool helps you visually decide the best final position. Once you're satisfied with the placement, use those values directly in your GSAP animation. Now we'll create the scroll animation for our third page. First, comment out the markers line from TL2 animation. Then copy the TL2 scroll animation, paste it below, and rename it to TL3. After that, change the trigger to page 3 and set the start position to 60% from the top. You'll now see new marker positions showing up for the TL3 scroll animation. This animation will begin right after the first two animations finish, and it will continue smoothly until around the middle of the fourth page. Here we want to bring our card to this middle position with a rotation animation. Now let's move forward with the third scroll animation. We use TL3.2 to target the card image. Set its top value to 345%, shifting it to the left at 34.5%, and also rotating it by -90 degrees. This gives the card a turning effect as it moves to the next section of our layout. Now open the browser and scroll through the page. You'll notice the scroll-based animation of the card is working perfectly, transitioning smoothly from one section to the next as we intended. Now, let's create the scrolling animation for the last page of our website. First, let's comment out the marker's true line from the TL3 animation. Then, copy and paste the same TL3 ScrollTrigger animation again. This time, change its name to TL4, set the trigger to page 4, and update the start position to 80% 60%. Open the browser and you'll see the next animation starts only after all the previous animations have finished playing. Next, we write TL4.2 and select the card image. Inside the animation object, we set the top value to 420% and rotate the card to 90 degrees. This positions the card properly for the fourth page as we scroll. Open the browser and scroll through the website. You'll see that the scroll animation of the card is now working properly and smoothly transitions into its new position. Now let's comment out the markers line to hide those visual guides we used during the scroll animations. Next, open the browser and you'll see our landing page animation working perfectly. It displays an amazing entrance animation, and as we start scrolling, the card image scrolls smoothly, creating an impressive and engaging user interface. If you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our latest content. Your support helps us create more exciting and valuable videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode of DevWave Diaries.